I'm sure you can remember the legendary Nigerian writer Buchi Emecheta. She died in January 2017. Emecheta was the author of books that helped to shape the narratives on African culture and literature. At the just concluded Nigeria International Book Fair, we bumped into one of her children who is on a mission to republish his mother's books. We had a chat about his efforts and, of course, Buchi Emecheta's works. Enjoy this. What's happening? We hear you are reproducing Buchi Emecheta's books. They all look very lovely, very good.
Yes, I mean, as you know, Buchi Emecheta, she's really well known in Nigeria, but because of the demise of Heinemann and those big publishers, her books are no longer so easily accessible here. And I came here last year to do a tribute, which was really sort of well received. But one of the things that came from the audience was the sense that they need to have some way of getting hold of Buchi's books. And so I went back to London and I decided what I needed to do was to reprint those books. A lot of them which had gone out of print in the UK and in Nigeria. And so that's what I did. So I formed a new company called Omanala Press, which in some ways it's a continuation of my mother's publishing company, because she had a publishing company in the 1980s. And the point of it was initially to republish all her books. So I managed to get the rights back from most of the publishers. And with that, I set about this project of relaunching the books. So we had the official launch in London in February 2018, which was almost coincided with the anniversary of her death. There was a big event in London, and that was the official launch. But I was aware that we had to come to Nigeria as well. And so that's why I'm here, just to let people know that the books are available. So Buchi's books are now back in print. These are the first 6 copies. But we're going to produce another 4 in the autumn, and at the end of the year there'll be 2 more. So by the end of this year, January the latest, there should be 10 copies of my mother's books back in print in this new edition.
Which is the oldest that you have reproduced here? Which is the oldest of the titles?
Well, the very first novel my mother wrote was In the Ditch. She wrote this when she was very young. She was only in her early 20s, and she was living in North London, raising 5 children. But at the same time also studying sociology. And it's a migration novel. She's writing about her experience of coming to the UK and establishing herself. But it's also a very autobiographical and a sociological novel as well. So this is the oldest, and she wrote this in 1972. So it's quite a long time ago. And actually it's one of my favourite novels, and the reason is I'm one of the characters in the story. Because she writes about her 5 children, and I was one of them. So it has a special place for me, because I actually remember when the book was printed, and the first copy we saw, published by Allison and Busby. A proud day, yeah.
How much do you think we've lost? There are so many very old classics that are out of print in Nigeria. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a real tragedy, really, because if the books aren't available, people don't have access to them. I mean, people like Alicia Nwordi and people like that, who are real classics, they should be known worldwide. If the books aren't available and people aren't reading them, it's a shame, because it's like part of one's legacy, cultural legacy, disappears. I think I've been told that Africans aren't very good at moralizing their heroes and heroines. And I think that needs to be taken on board, because people like Chinua Achebe and those kind of big writers, yeah, they do get sort of mentioned, and their books are still in print. But I think some of the lesser-known authors, which are still as good, and their contributions are still as valuable, also need to get the same kind of treatment. I think my mother was lucky in the sense that I happened to champion her cause. But I think there also other authors also need champions. I'm aware that Flora Nwapa, for example, her family has also formed a kind of Flora Nwapa society to do something very similar. And I think it's important. It's a shame that it comes to the family to do it. In some cultures, they recognize the value of these works and they will do it anyway. But that's just how it is. But as to the loss, I think it's tragic, because I think also it affects the exports, because people abroad don't know about the kind of wealth of literature here. So we just have to have some way of preserving those works. Interestingly, a lot of those works are out of print, so some enterprising publishers in the digital field may actually produce kind of digital copies. So they won't disappear completely, but I think it's important that somebody takes on those roles So it's great to have emerging writers, but it's also good to protect one's heritage and also one's kind of back catalogue of cultural icons.